setup like that when we have our own place.
Yeah, it's been pretty handy.
Oh yeah, how's it been going by you?
It's been going pretty good. Been having some challenges, but everything's working out all right.
Yeah, same here. After Japan, we started to tank for a little while, and then it's slowly coming back up again. So.
Well, I want to hear more about that. Let me turn on my camera right quick.
Okay.
My other camera. Okay. We got that going. When did y'all get back from Japan?
We got back in a little before May, about a week before May started, end of April, and Japan was awesome. Japan was awesome. I was there about 3 weeks. We were there about 3 weeks and stayed with friends of ours. And went, so didn't see everything, but we saw quite a bit. A lot of temples, a lot of the wilderness area and everything. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, you can see a lot more in 3 weeks than you can see in 1 week, can't you?
Oh yeah. We went out to Fukushima Prefecture, where the disaster took place with the nuclear site, and we did a Shungite blessing and everything out there. And you couldn't go to the actual town where that took place, but you could go into the entire prefecture, which is the one of the largest in Japan. People don't realize that Fukushima, where the disaster took place, was this little teeny little town, like seaside town, and the entire it's like a state. It's like saying New York. New York's a little town, and then you have the whole state. It's the same thing. So. And people forget that when you hear Fukushima, people go, "Ooh," but no, it's just this little area.
So, what was it that was right around there? Did you say that? Did you say that it was a creamery? I didn't understand what you said was right there. That maybe you meant like the capital. This, like it's the capital of the state. I got that part.
Yeah, the capital. Yeah. Fukushima. The town is like this little seaside village, and then you have the whole prefecture or state.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do they still have the bullet train over there?
Oh yeah, I rode it several times. They have the local trains that go from from where we were staying in Meguro. It was called. We were part of Tokyo. It's called Meguro. And we were staying there. Just the streets are really narrow. They have the little train station that you could walk to from where we were. Then the bullet train, we took that all the way. We stayed in Kyoto a couple of days. We took the bullet train all the way there. And it's interesting. A bullet train. It's really neat. You see everything just whip past you as you're going past. Usually, anybody that has like a weak stomach probably has to get used to that. But yeah, everything's just blurring past you.
Believe it or not, I've ridden on the bullet train.
Oh, really? Really?
Late 80s.
Okay.
It was a lot not more novel back then, I guess. Maybe more of a new deal. But It probably goes even faster now.
Oh, yeah. I found out that, though, if they want to make things like an hour, they actually will slow the train to accommodate certain schedules. That's how some of their companies work there. They're basically being shysters by doing that. But because it can get to a place in like 10 minutes, they choose to elongate it to like an hour.
Oh, wow. That's a trip, huh? Fascinating. Yeah. So did you see any Shinto shrines?
Yes, several of them. We went to one. I'm trying to think of the name of the one that had the orange torii gates, the main one in Japan. We went to people nickname it the Torii Gate Temple, but it's I cannot remember the name of it, but it's where you have the orange torii gates that lead all the way up the mountainside for 3 kilometers, and then lead back down the mountain. Went there. It was very interesting where they had little graveyard stop-offs and temple stop-offs the whole way as you walked up there, and went to the temple where the 47 Ronin are buried. Went there, and
Fascinating.
yeah, interesting thing about that was talk about synchronicities. See, I found out I had had a past life as one of the 47 Ronin. And sometimes you have to go to the places where things happen to kind of resolve the energy or level the energy that took place then. So we happened to go right to the spot, the graveyard, and the temple. Well, interesting enough, the temple portion of it, at the very back, there's this temple where the monks keep everything locked up and closed, usually almost all year round. They don't let anybody in there except 3 days a year. We got there on day 2.
Perfect.
Just happened to walk in there on day 2.
Oh, you didn't even plan it like that.
No, didn't plan it like that. And the monk said we were the luckiest people, and we're like, well, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "This is the second day of 3 days that this is open." I'm thinking, "Really? You don't have this open year round?" No. Yeah, and I was able to go around to the graveyard, do the incense blessing and stuff like that. Left some shungite pieces there, and then the energy resolved itself after that.
Oh, I bet. So were you getting a lot of readings and stuff while you were there?
Oh yes, several people that I read in person while I was there. Totally different. It wasn't like a culture shock to them things I was saying. Some things made sense, but some of the things I had to say about some of the programs and stuff I had been inducted to, and everything, they knew nothing about that. It was a totally open palette to talk about all.
Oh, they didn't know about mind control and all that stuff?
No, they didn't know about like the secret space program, my labs. They didn't know about any of that stuff because they'd been kind of isolated from that on their YouTube. Their YouTube is separate from ours, except if you are able to like bookmark it or link it somehow. And they had never heard half of this stuff, so we had to explain it from soup to nuts to them.
In other words, they have a separate internet from us.
Yeah, it's not completely separate, but they have they have their own section.
It's controlled.
Yeah, it's definitely controlled. Yeah. We noticed that really quick when we were there. Except if you're able to link them, like if you're able to put the Japanese kanji and the AdWords on our YouTube, it'll link back over to theirs. If you're able to go onto like Google and look up how it's translated in Japanese kanji, copy paste into the AdWords the kanji, then it'll link back over to theirs if you want some of your material on their end. It works that way.
Huh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. So now, one thing that struck me, and I was 17 years old when I went to Tokyo, and I went to the nightlife and everything, the clubs and stuff downtown, and I want to know if it's still this way, but there were signs everywhere, but especially on the fanciest restaurants, Japanese only, no whites. In other words, there's racism. In other words, white people were not allowed in many of the establishments.
That's not that way now. I was able to walk into, JoAnna and I and our friend Annie were able to walk into anywhere. She's Australian, Annie's Australian, and lives there, is married to a Japanese business person there. And yeah, we were able to walk into anywhere. We were completely welcomed. People were like, "Hey, hello,"
Okay, that's encouraging to hear. That's a stark difference from the late 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she even told us that it was different back then, too, because they had lived there that long, and she said, "Oh, yeah, it was very different then." She was saying, and it's very open. We went to even the smallest like establishment in like an alleyway, and people were waving at us, from convenience stores, going, "Hello."
That's good. Now, one thing I'll bet has not changed, and I'm going to ask you about this, Chris. Were you or were you not a giant?
Yes, that was like a Nordic giant being amongst a race of midgets, basically. But how it looked, I towered above everybody there.
Yes, I'm 5'9", and believe it or not, I am much. I'm taller. I stick out in the crowd of being tall over there. I'm sure you just.
Oh yeah, I'm 6'1", so I stood out over there.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. It was very funny because we'd go to these temple sites and everything, and people were like at my shoulders as I was walking out or lower, and people were looking at me like I was an alien or something in some places.
Now, the Shinto religion is different from Buddhism, isn't it?
Yeah, it. I'm trying to see what. Yeah, they do have Buddhist practices there. I've noticed. They have a lot of images of Buddha there, but they present him differently. They have him presented as an equal amongst the crowd of people, like he's amongst people, or they had images of him, having a funeral, amongst people. People were mourning for him as like a friend or a brother. That's different than say further west. It's a completely different viewpoint of Buddha as like a separate deity further west. But then in Japan, he's considered more of an equal, and I thought that was very interesting.
And of course, you've heard those stories about that. Some people think that Jesus went to Japan.
Some people have been talking about that. I didn't hear too much about it, but
I don't know anything about that. But now the Shinto religion has a heavy component of ancestral worship, doesn't it?
Oh yes, and also nature and elemental worship in there. And what was very, very interesting, two things about that came up in people's sessions while I was there. There was a person I read that he wanted to know more about his ancestors, if his ancestors were his guides. Totally different than here. People want to know who their spirit guide is and everything like that. He wanted to know if his ancestors were watching over him. And I'm thinking, okay, this should be interesting. I'll reach out into the spirit world and look. And sure enough, this person's ancestors came up in the session. Like this whole group of them just came in and were sending love and everything towards him, and I just felt this enormous amount of love coming from all of this person's ancestors and guides. I could see that he had a sumo wrestler in his past. He had a samurai in his past that he'd already know about. I contacted that one first, and it just branched out to the entire extended family that were watching him from the spirit world, and it was a very, very cool read. I hope he lets me post that one because it was very interesting.
Well, do people over there get more support from their ancestors in general than people do over here? Or?
I don't think so. I just think that it's just the perception is different. Because I notice here, if I contact somebody's passed on relatives, I'll still get them. It's just people don't connect to them the same here. They want to find a guide, a spirit guide, or galactic guide here. They're completely connected to their lineage in a positive way.
Since they pay more attention over there to their ancestors, does that somehow give their ancestors more fuel or gasoline to
I wouldn't say that. It's just more of a connection there than here. I can still connect to, like, say, my grandfather if I wanted to. If I wanted to call it to my grandfather here, and I can do that for anybody that gets a session. Well, it seems the energy's a little different. Like that thread isn't as strong with people wanting to connect to their ancestry. But there, it is very powerful. There, I didn't expect how much of a stark difference there would be there. Also, with the elemental magic, there, I use it to purge certain demons and jinn, for instance. I come across jinn periodically, and I usually get the elements to disintegrate a jinn. Well, over there, there was a jinn tried to attack me there, and I was trying to use my normal four-point magic against earth, air, fire, and water against them, and it wasn't working. It's because the ones there were accustomed to the 5-point star or the pentacle, meaning the 5 elements of magic. So I had to adapt it. We have earth, air, fire, and water. They have earth, wind, fire, water, and metal there. And metal, yeah. So then they consider metal an element.
Oh, so that's the 5th element, huh? That's fascinating.
Yeah. And so I had to use that. I integrated all those into the way I repelled things there, and it worked perfectly after I adapted what I was doing to their customs.
Huh, that's fascinating. One of the most startling things I've run across recently in just looking in different things, but this is it's referencing these Shinto shrines. Mm-hmm. But the idea that these are another example of this Tartarian stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Have you had any chance to look into the Tartarian?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, I definitely have, and I already apparently knew about it. I just didn't, for whatever reason, my brain wasn't linking the name to stuff I knew about already. And I looked into it. It was very interesting last night. Something told me the night before I spoke to you, watch something on it, and I was like, okay, and I waited and I watched a video on it, and I already knew that at one point there was a worldwide empire that basically controlled the globe. That's why you have all of these structures that look the same. And I had been saying that before. I had been bringing
Oh
up
yeah,
in
yeah.
channelings. I've been saying there was once a worldwide empire that was linked to Atlantis, Lemuria, Hyperborea, all of that. And strange enough, all of these things have been popping up in channelings this week for the Tartarian Empire, and leading up to me talking to you. And what was really fascinating last night, as I was watching this, I started to feel like like my energy was raising, my energy was spiking. That usually means I'm starting to clear something, like something was clogging the works somewhere, and my energy vibration was starting to go up. It was like I was acknowledging my own presence within that in that history, like past life or other our soul history, and it was starting to. I can even feel it now, even talking about it. And what's very interesting is in other sessions I've done, like with Annie in Japan, she wanted to know the origins of Japan, and I came to find out there is a race out there that are an alien race called the Ontumbans, and they're like a proto-Japanese culture that exists on the other side of the galaxy, on the outer rim of the galaxy. And they came here and introduced the landmass of Japan and their own colonists here as an alien culture. And there are other Pleiadian cultures, like native ones that eventually were Lemurian. You have other Pleiadian cultures, Syrian cultures that came in, and also the descendants thereof that became some of the Agarthans underground and everything over time. This was the original foundation of the Tartarian Empire.
Oh,
I
you mean
found out.
the Japanese was?
Of the Japanese and various other cultures working together, like ancient Mayan, Native American type ones.
Right.
All of these cultures, Viking type ones. They're like Pleiadian cultures. All these other cultures came here, and also in our system, we had a planet at one time called Maldek, which you know about. They had more of a Viking giant culture. They came in and they helped build all of the structure. So everybody here was working together. This is why the bad guys wanted to wipe this from history, because the bad guys want to divide and conquer, create lines on a map, basically, no, this country's this country's that, this is this. The Tartarian Empire had virtually the globe at one point.
Yeah, and what I realized in looking at this Tartarian material is like you've been talking about that for years.
Yeah, I've been talking
it
about it
just
for years. I
you
just
know
have a name to put to
it
it.
just
Yeah.
didn't that name wasn't just so that was really blew me away. And I mean now there's several concepts associated with the Tartarian, and this is that mud flood.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that might have even been artificially created, but I mean the mud flood is for sure real. One thing that always bugged me by watching some shows like Friends and Jerry Seinfeld and stuff like that is these what they call these brownstone dwellings in New York, where they come off their front porch, down these stairs, and then to the left and to the right of them, there's like people's little porches, but they're underground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they didn't build those buildings like that. There's 3 or 4 stories under there. That mud flood, all of the like Chicago, Omaha, some of these cities were literally they weren't built; they were dug out.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had this feeling that it was artificially created. As soon as when you said mud flood, I went and looked at this immediately, and the impression I got was like alien technology, caused it to cause the mud flood, just like the Great Flood in ancient times, flooding the earth, causing the rains and to flood the earth. And before that was fire. That's what originally was destroyed a lot of this empire, and it started to rebuild after Atlantis went away. And yeah.
Yeah. So what I mean, what I can't really understand is there was people back then and the Tartarians and stuff, but there's also apparently this giants. There was giants as well. Some of the giants were. the idea was put forth that this mud flood was done to kill all the giants.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, it also killed like 90% of humanity, and they knew it was going to do that, but they just didn't care. They're like, well, that's collateral damage or whatever. Who are the bad guys?
Yeah, the bad guys didn't really care. They wanted to reduce the population so the population was more controllable, but humanity came back from it big time after that. They wanted to kill all the giants. I found out in a channeling years ago when I was asking about that they were trying to get rid of the Nephilim or the giant people at that time. Though the Dark Anunnaki were trying to flood the earth to purge the earth of them, but it didn't work because there were a lot of them buried underground. Some were in Agartha, some got down there. Yeah, so I found out. Yeah, they're still very much alive and kicking.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. So they just disappeared from our view.
Yeah, they disappeared from our view into different frequencies. Some escaped off world because they had technology. Some escaped to a different part of the galaxy. There's an outpost further off in the galaxy. I found out where some actually escaped to. One day they were connecting to me telepathically, and then I just felt like I knew that group that was speaking to me, and they said, yes, our group escaped the world as it was going to hell, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was very, very fascinating. And I run across buried giants telepathically all the time. Under just even, it seems like random parts of the planet that seem to have no connection to one another. But again, it was all one empire, so of course they'd have access to everything.
Yeah, and we've already seen giant books, but now they're starting to show giant guns like muskets, and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the most fascinating thing to me is that these cathedrals, these Gothic cathedrals, and you're thinking, how did they sit there and carve all that stuff? They didn't carve any of that stuff. It was all some kind of technology it's like a poured into a mold,
Mm-hmm.
But
yes.
that these cathedrals were not designed as places of worship. They're power stations.
Power stations, absorbing energy from people. Yeah, I always tell people
and
that.
From the ether, from the air. It just blew me away. And then also the idea that these organs, huge organs in churches, serve a dual purpose. First of all, I don't know if it was mind control or what, but it did give them a general sense of well-being, but it could also somehow be used as a weapon.
Oh, yes, sound can definitely be used as a weapon, having those organ pipes go up in the shape that they are, almost like a triangular shape. Somebody blew one of those off in a church I was in one time, and I just felt this from it when I wasn't expecting it. And it was more of a stunning feeling, like a discombobulating type of feeling that made me almost in a hypnotic, ready state to receive whatever it is they were about to talk about, type of thing.
Oh, yeah, the mind control kind of type of deal. And then I don't know exactly how this would work, or that this is even true, but somehow the idea that even the stained glass windows are for weapons, they somehow focus the sound or something.
I found out that there's it can work both ways. Colored windows can be used for good to actually deflect dark entities away, but it can also, different colors at different symmetries or different. How can I put it? The way the colors are can cause people to get into a certain hypnotic state as well to be able to get their minds into more of a controllable state. So.
Wow, that's something else. Another idea that really blew me away is the idea that these old wood burning stoves that we see.
Mm-hmm.
That they are wood burning stoves and everything like that, but these fireplaces and these big mansions and all this stuff, that's where heat came from, but there was no fire in there. It was more this Tartarian stuff where they brought in the energy from the ether, and that metal plate back there just reflected heat.
Yes, I've seen some of this old technology to where they could have a single plate of metal heat up an entire village if they wanted to. I've seen this. It's a very highly advanced level of technology. It incorporates elemental magic and physics. This is why it was toxic to the bad guys. I found, like the Draco and like the Dark Anunnaki and them. Interestingly enough, there was somebody I was speaking to that lives in Poland, and he told me that there were some Tartarian. There was a Tartarian castle close to where he lived. and it was basically being all but forgotten. Like it was like the bad guys wanted to wipe them completely from history. Like, oh, no, don't pay attention to that. No, don't pay attention to that. They were their greatest enemies because they were a unity consciousness that was focused at the bad guys. They didn't want that, so they divided them up. Interestingly enough, when Hitler came into the picture, when he started working with the Draco very heavily, they told the Nazis, I found this out in a channeling, this person asked me, what do you feel Hitler's connection to the Tartarian Empire was? And I came to find out the reason he wanted to search the globe for all these religious artifacts, and he was looking for Tartarian technology that the Draco were trying to get him to deliver back to them so they could upgrade their technological base. They had forgotten some things of their own. They wanted it to be upgrade
that
them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I just can't believe it, and then the idea that the world's fairs, I don't know if you've run across that yet, but the whole concept of world's fairs is they claiming that they built this stuff. In other words, there's a still part of a hotel like in Portugal that's like 5 acres of solid buildings. I don't know if it's still all there or they took it down, but see, they've been destroying these buildings.
Yeah, they've been allowing either nature to do it or they've just been tearing them down, and they're really part of Tartarian technology.
Exactly. So on the World's Fair, they'll say, yeah, they built this just for the World's Fair, even though it's 500 years old. Mm-hmm. And then they say, well, we're going to tear it down in 10 months. And they tear it down just so the evidence won't be there.
Yeah, and it's usually the Nazi control that are doing things like that, doing these world fairs to try to either distract people away from things like that, or in the 1964 World's Fair, New York, at the Unisphere. We came to find out, JoAnna and I came to find out that was the one that Werner von Braun was actually hosting. We came to find out that the Nazis came in and presented these are all the technologies you're never going to be able to create, because that's when they activated the binary network to dumb down people. Was at that World's Fair. That's what the Unisphere is. It's an artificial intelligence antenna is what that is.
What, that big ball or what?
Yeah, it's an antenna where it's a grounding rod for an artificial intelligence that's both ground and satellite, and that can transmit back and forth to. Think of them as a giant circuit board. That there are other grounded spheres too that are pieces of art, or they are on other buildings somewhere along the planet, and it's a giant circuit board where this binary network AI bounces around all over the place.
Well, describe this big round thing. Did you say it's been there since 1964?
Yeah, they put it's from the World's Fair in New York. It's the park where the big Unisphere is. It's the big globe sphere. It was they showed it in the movie Men in Black at the end of the movie.
And there's other ones like it around the world?
Yes, there's other ones like that, but it could be disguised as a piece of art or like an antenna or something like that. Like in Toronto, there's this giant, tower with a sphere on the top of it with a point. These types of things that bounces the binary signal through also the 5G towers, all of it. It bounces.
Yeah, my ex just got back from the Vatican and Rome and everything, and they took a bunch of pictures. And there is, and I've seen this on conspiracy sites and stuff before. It's a huge, globe, almost the size of a small house, but it's like modern art. It's like even looks like it has circuit boards and stuff inside. And I was like, what's going on with that?
Yeah, and they were depicting. This was also in front of the Vatican, that sculpture, and we saw one in Washington D.C. while we were there. We did a show on disclosure in the media through the arts, and these pieces of art were actually, I cannot remember the artist's name. It was the same artist that made these, but he kept referring back to it refers back to the world of magic, or he used the term world of magic. And these spheres were the actual original AI spheres that invaded the system, the archontic forces. This is what they looked like, and or their ships looked like. And these pieces of sculpture were depicting, hey, they are working gears on the inside of these things because they're machines, they're artificial intelligence. They were showing them out in the open what they actually were. The innards, people think they're just modern art. No, they're telling you that AI is basically running things, is what they're trying to tell you.
Yeah, and it really, I mean, even has been for a while.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. About 500,000 years ago, when the Archontic forces invaded the solar system, the shield on the outside of the solar system got taken down. The forces came in and divided the world even in time. They were able to send their forces to different time frames and come out on the other end and start to divide the world. And this is also another way the Tartarian Empire got taken down and divided into country borders, is because these forces went through time and tried to influence how that empire formed. It's not working because time is starting to reform via the Mandela effect back together again. It's starting to heal itself. Nature's starting to heal itself. That's why these things about the Tartarian Empire are coming forward, because somebody out there said, "Hey, we were one time. We were one once. We can be it again."
Yeah, when that blew me away when somebody brought up the correlation between the Mandela effect and Tartarian. I was like, oh wait, of course there's some type of connection, there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and interestingly enough, when JoAnna and I were in Jamestown, this was a couple of years back, we came to find out that there were Montauk agents that went back through time as well and started changing historical events as well. They would always carry a silver box with them with the letter M on it, like that would have certain tools on it. They lined it with silver so that it couldn't be their tools inside and their equipment couldn't be disrupted. That this box was basically their tether back to the present day. And we found out there was a man that got mixed in with the population of Jamestown. His last name was West, I believe. And he disrupted the history of Jamestown. See, John Smith originally, in the original timeline, was supposed to become the president of the United States at the time. This agent goes in there and disrupts everything and makes John Smith look like a blithering drunken idiot. So we found out that guy, buried with this silver box, he actually returned. We found out he was an agent for Montauk that went back to the Jamestown period and disrupted the entire history. And so the history we know is the corrupted history.
Oh yeah, that stands to reason.
Yeah, and we found that out. It just the whole area just stunk of draconian influence and cabal influence. When we went in, I could just feel it. You could feel the fumes of it there when we were there.
Oh yeah. So is Colorado I don't know if it's Colorado City or Boulder, Colorado, but is that where some of this stuff is being somewhere in Colorado? Is it being headquartered now for some of the stuff?
In Cheyenne Mountain, in Colorado Springs, there.
Colorado Springs. That's yeah.
Yeah, like where they filmed parts of the Stargate series, or where they had the Stargate series set. They were trying to tell people that they had portal technology. That there is a massive portal that they use there that is in Cheyenne Mountain. And that's where they're conducting a lot of these things. It's the second largest. The largest facility is in Alaska. The biggest one, the biggest portal, like terminal type thing, like you see in the movie Men in Black, where you see all the aliens going back and forth. Uh-huh. It's exactly like that. They tried to make it in a humorous way, but it's like that in the movie. They depicted it right.
And so when these things and stuff come through the portal, are they come into physicality?
Yes, they are physical beings from where they're entering from. Think of like an airport terminal, and they're just using a portal to come back and forth. I tried to telepathically speak to these aliens before. They had nothing to do with me whatsoever. I tried to project myself there and tried to speak to them. Had nothing to do with me whatsoever.
Well, there's probably some kind of law or something that they can be punished for talking to you. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, there actually is. You're actually right on that. There actually is punishment for aliens that try to divulge anything to the surface population. They want to. There are groups out there that so badly want to. That I've encountered them. I've encountered these beings face to face before. That they actually want to mingle with our kind, but they can't as long as these law structures are in place, or these treaties are in place. Is what they are.
Right, and so this force that's the cabal that's controlling that and everything like that, they're trying even more and more outrageous things. It seems like, I don't want to get into politics, but people try to bring up all the wild stuff that's happening in politics. To me, that just sounds like a desperation move. That it really shows how that they really are kind of on the ropes.
Yeah, we call the whole political arena the theater of puppets, is what we call it. Because this is why, we don't go into politics at all on our show either, except if a guy brings it up or something, because, or if somebody asks the question to us, like about Trump this, Obama that, et cetera, et cetera. We call it the theater of puppets, where they're basically performing an act on television, but it's more of a distraction act or a false flag, where they're distracting you away from everything else that's going on around you.
And it's all scripted. I mean, people get outraged about Trump and everything like this, and my one observation has been, and I've heard, I don't even pay attention to politics, but the little I've seen, okay, some outrageous comments here and there and everything like that. One person is not capable of all of the crazy stuff that he supposedly does. There's people, there's like writers, people like me are working in teams, creating all this stuff.
I've seen this as I bring back the memories from my SSP time and all of that. I actually remember being around these people, actually sitting around a table going, okay, this is what we're going to put in print. This is what's going to distract here. They actually formulate equations out to show which story is going to affect the most, make the most biggest distraction, or they'll have a programmed person doing something out in society. We'll have this person do something stupid over here that'll catch the media attention or something like that. And that's how they calculate this out for months, even years.
Oh yeah, I mean, when somebody becomes outraged by something that Trump does or something like that, that's not an accident.
No.
They were like, working on that. How can we get some people outraged? We don't care about what, just outraged about something.
Yeah, the thing we found out about Trump is the soul that came in, not necessarily the man, but the soul that came in to be that particular expression that he is now, to show everybody how big of a circus it actually is. That's how we found out that was the soul's mission in the first place.
Well, so maybe level beyond level, he actually is doing some good, just to be making such a buffoonery out of the whole deal or whatever.
Oh yeah, to show how stupid it actually is, but at the same time he's being his distraction self, because that's the human right there. That the human really would have no idea what the soul came in to do on that level. Right. The soul, on the other hand, is performing the actions that it intended to do from the very beginning. To show everybody, hey, everybody, wake up. This is what's actually, this is the circus. This is the theater of puppets right here. Pay no attention to this. This is how stupid it actually is.
Yeah. Well, the message, I got the message because I don't pay any attention to that stuff.
Me neither. People ask me political questions all the time. They'll ask me specific things about like bills or something like that. I'm thinking, yes, because I have no clue about it because I don't pay attention to it.
Right. Yeah. We got to choose what we put our energy into.
Yeah, and whether it's a distraction. Now, do I get frustrated with the distractions? Oh, God, yes. JoAnna and my mother and them will see I get severely frustrated when something I know is a false flag. I can just feel that it is. And I know somewhere they are doing something else even worse that people don't know about. It could be under the ocean. It could be in the sky. It could be on the other end of the country. You don't know. And I found out during the time of Hurricane Matthew, when that hit the coast. That's when JoAnna and I were out on the coast when we got hit with Hurricane Matthew when I was out there. What happened was I found out they generated that hurricane through weather control. They do it for all of them, but for that one, they did that so that they could pick up a UFO that had crashed in the Everglades. They wanted a distraction over here so they could come here and pick up the crashed spaceship. And they figured that was the best way to do it because that area is heavily populated. Somebody would have seen something. They tried to pass it off as like a meteorite or falling star or something like that. And they generated this whole hurricane, caused a whole lot of damage to people's homes, everything, just whipped through the Outer Banks and everything just to pick up one little dinky spaceship,
Yeah. We're all collateral damage, to them or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, and the thing with the fires, too, it's them, too. Like the fires on the other coast. That's them doing it too. We found out that we told people on our show, we tell people about it because it also grounds the information in what we call the earthly akejik. It makes other people aware on a subconscious and soul level, hey, there's stuff going on. And we found out that these cabal people were just going around lighting matches and lighting gasoline in fires. They were disguised as normal people. But the other portion of it was the HARP activity that they were using to scorch areas of the planet, or like scorch homes out, because they were trying to get people to move out of an area that they wanted to do something with.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think what they're actually doing is it's just greed and real estate deals. They might not even want to build an underground base there. They just want to go back and buy the real estate and build their own mansions there.
Oh yeah, that's exactly it. Or they want to hand it over to one of the alien races that they made a deal with. Because a while back, all people have heard about the Georgia Guidestones, and that the fact that it's like almost like a death clock. I found it as what that is. That timeline is no more. They don't seem to understand this, but that timeline has been averted. That they created on this. What they were doing is planning certain diseases, viruses, and everything at certain rotations of the Earth. At certain times and rotations basically make the most chaos at that particular time to try to cause a culling is what they were trying to do. And those portions of the land that were going to be formally occupied by people, those different races were going to take it over as land plot claims at that point. I came to find out. And there are several races out there that are waiting for, the Cabal made a deal with them. I've even communicated with them saying, the Cabal made a deal with us over this. I said, that doesn't concern us whatsoever. It's like you can just wait and trade with humans when the time comes, when you want to reveal yourselves, when I've told them that. And some of those races get furious because some of the clock has ran out, some of the time has ran out, that the Cabal was trying to initiate this extinction event through this.
So that plan failed.
Yeah, it failed horribly. That's what I found that Georgia Guidestone was. They were using archaeoastronomy to formulate the timing for all of these viruses and everything.
Yeah, and it just, I wonder what upset it.
All the new energies did, and plus there are benevolent alien races out there that won't allow an extinction event. They're not trying to save people like Superman or Batman or anything like that, but they said they would not allow an extinction event to take place.
Who won't allow it? The Nephilim?
Some of the giants, but also a lot of the races from the Pleiades and the Boots constellation. They are coming in saying, no, we're not going to allow an extinction event to take place like happened in ancient times. We're not going to allow that to happen again. Some of them are the descendants of people that were there at the time of these disasters. They're like, no, we're not going to allow this again. Earth is special. It's on an energy point or a nexus point in the galaxy that affects everything else. These are our brothers and sisters. We're not going to allow this to happen to them.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just opens up so many questions. I'm sure with a lot of the readings you do and stuff like that, is it mostly personal questions that people are wanting to know, or is there also like this kind of stuff that you and me talk about that they're interested in?
It's actually a mixture of both. I get a mixed bag. I'll get a lot of personal questions because of the fact that their personal lives are being affected by entities or by scalar technology, or they're being targeted or something like that. They're being affected that way. But then they have these worldwide questions like, okay, when's this going to change? When's this going to change? And I don't always have that answer for them because of these new energies, these new fast-paced energies, especially this year. Anything that people thought were going to be concreted in any sort of concepts like the financial reset or any of the collapsing of the banks or anything like that is not going to happen the way people think it's going to happen. It's going to happen slow over time, but there's also these fast-paced moving energies where things can manifest in a minute or collapse in a minute. I've noticed.
Yeah, one thing when I travel, especially when I get on an airplane, and I know obviously you and JoAnna were on one just recently coming back from Japan, but It makes me realize, this whole idea of martial law in the United States and this big civil war and everything. If that ever became true, the very first thing that would go away would be commercial air travel like that. The cabal needs that. That's one of their main tools. That's how they get all their people around. They're not going to give that up.
No,
and there's not going to be like a big, like the gray state type, military. I mean,
Yeah, they would. They were trying to turn it into martial law, but do it in a more passive way. But then there were some plans that went awry. They were trying to get people for a couple decades to focus heavily on China being the next enemy. They've done it to North Korea now, as more of a false flag sort of thing, because Kim Jong Un is one of their people.
Of course, of course.
Yeah. In China, what happened with China, you always would hear probably back in the 90s, different seers would always say, oh, you got to watch out for China, or you got to watch out for China. Some of those people were plants trying to get that idea planted in people's heads so that people would co-create a war with China.
Yeah, and that is one of the dangers of the conspiracy community is we're sitting here trying to save the world or expose all this stuff, but the truth is they can get their ideas out through shows like this and have people worried about it, and just the worrying about it will cause them to create it.
Exactly. They co-create all sorts of things like that. Like we went past Mount Shasta not too long ago. Talk about co-creating disaster timelines. Went past Mount Shasta, and I have a video up on our YouTube called "In the Shadow of Mount Shasta," and we drove past. There was the highway that went behind Shasta and towards the Mount Shasta little city town that was there. And we drove past on the way back from Washington State, or way back from Washington State. We went through a lot of junk when we stayed with people there too, and we were forced to come back to Arizona. Well, on the way back past Shasta, and I just felt like this heavy scanning field was just scanning my internal organs, my energy, everything. I just felt this deep scan. And I don't usually allow scans, but this one was very thick and very dense. And all of a sudden in my head, I could see who was doing it. It was a group of aliens that were living under Mount Shasta. And you've heard the stories of Telos City and all of them under Mount Shasta. The Agarthan city called Telos. It's a lot of people go to Mount Shasta as like a shrine or like a pilgrimage type of thing to Mount Shasta. Well, the forest people had warned us about Mount Shasta prior to us going through there, but we had to go the route past it, and I could see these Syrian-based groups. There's negative Syrians and positive ones that are out there, and they're the descendants and remnants of ancient Lemuria. There was a Syrian class, ruling class on ancient Lemuria, and these people are the descendant lineage of them that are in Agartha. Well, what happened was went past them, and I'm looking at them, and all of a sudden I just felt this overwhelming anger towards them. I'm like, and I was really angry with them. Like, what the hell are you doing? I just felt like my soul self just was like, just pissed off with them, like shame on you sort of thing. And then it took me a minute to put it together. And they started to communicate with me after they badgered us for a little bit. I recorded while I was with the phone. I had the phone up as we were going through past Mount Shasta. And I told everybody that these people under Mount Shasta weren't as they appeared. They actually, the Pleiadian groups that were there, the Pleiadian Lemurians that were there were basically tossed out of there. And there were these these Syrian Lemurian groups that were now in there that were basically faking angel encounters with people, or like high energetic encounters with people, like, oh, talk with this angelic galactic, all that other stuff that happened out there. Been doing it about 20 years now. What happened was I came to find out they not only were responsible for blowing up Mount St. Helens back in 1980, that particular group, when these wars were going on, they were responsible for blowing up that volcano, but they were going to try it again with Yellowstone, that one that everybody talks about would take out part of the country. That talk about co-creating,
Yeah, the super volcano or whatever.
Yeah, they had the ability to explode a bomb under there that would blow this up and cause yet another extinction event. And other galactic groups were stopping them from doing this. But they were trying over the years, last 20, 30 years, they were trying to get people to focus on, it's just known fact that there's going to be a big one earthquake in California, that volcano is going to explode, and it's going to take out half the country, about half the population. Don't worry, it's a normal thing, That's how
I remember that. They were really battering us over the head with that.
Yeah, that was that group doing that from up there. They knew they were safe there. they're the same group of morons that are trying to get people to think that there's going to be this like pole shift that's going to kill 3/4 of the Earth's population. They're responsible for creating
and there's
that
nothing
whole.
you can do about it. It's not it's not that it's going to happen tomorrow. It should have happened 100 years ago. So just don't worry. It's for sure going to happen.
Yeah, they wanted people to think of it in a nonchalant way. People will die,
Yeah,
and
we're all going to die. It's just all right.
Yeah, and I went past there, and they were mad as hell that I was actually hearing this. It's like, why are you telling me this? I'm going to tell people online. What are you telling me this for? And it's like, you just must be stupid, because they were telling me this, and at the same time they were trying to psychically attack me and JoAnna. Well, we pulled off the side of the road, and I had some shungite and some Sedona dirt with me, and I left that off the side of the road in a ditch, just past the Mount Shasta. I left shungite blessing and some flower petals and stuff like that. And from that point forward, they harassed me a little bit when we went to a friend of ours that lives in California. Psychically, they harassed me a little bit, but beyond that, once we had grounded that in the earthly Akashic and once we posted that video, their attacks stopped completely. Like, they couldn't refute their own words, basically. They couldn't refute what they said.
Oh, okay. But did it also have something to do with the geography? In other words, you said once you got to a certain point, the attacks.
Yeah, well, that's true. They also, once we got past their range influence, they'd stopped as well. But I could still get little blips from them even here. And after a while, after many people had seen that video and started focusing psychically on them stopping and co-creating them stopping, they stopped.
Fascinating. Well, that's some a plan of action right there that worked out.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually glad we encountered that, because I was able to inform everybody about it.
Yeah, that really shows good taking some action and something good coming out of it, especially utilizing the co-creative force of all the the listeners and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you did bring up the forest people, and that's interesting because I was going to bring up a couple things about that, two different things. And one of them is something I've heard recently, and it almost seems like you were touching upon this, but I don't understand this deal about star seeds and all this stuff. And then there's apparently there's many different names for the forest people, but this person that I'm good friends with has done some psychic work with me and stuff like that. I think you know her. She's got some message. And somehow the idea that I'm somehow related to these, and that I think, if I'm not mistaken, you even said something about that one time. That I'm somehow related.
Yeah, what happened is that the people are related, and the forest people brought this up. Yes, we carry some of their genetic codes within us.
That's exactly what she said.
Yeah,
I have some of these genetic codes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also light codes and all that other stuff that we have that information within us about them. See, we were strong allies with the forest people at one time prior to the Archons separating everybody. And also separated the forest people from themselves, too. That's why you have more barbaric type ones out there that have forgotten themselves. Then you have the ancient line that's from the Pleiades. That's the Native Americans call them the ones from beyond the sun. They're the more ancient. They call themselves the Anakim. The original name was the Anakim, they told me. And their descendant lineage are some of the other ones that are here. And they're like clans. They have government like clans. Like they'll have like an elder, like how Native American tribes do. Then they have other people, the family members that are around them and help them guard an area or have a colony established or something like that. It's very interesting. The forest people also, some of them are from ancient Lemuria as well. That's where you get the no neck ones from. The ones that have that kind of look like Samoans with a bunch of hair. Those are they're like that. They're related to the Lemurian, Hawaiian, Polynesian groupings. That's where also some of the DNA got mixed in there, was from the Lemurian period as well. And on the west coast of the United States, you have three major groupings of underground Agarthans. You have those Syrian group that I mentioned before, Pleiadian, Elven type ones, and also Native American Pleiadians. But then you have the forest people that are underground there as well.
Oh, so there's three major groups of beings, live physical or ones
Physical
that go
beings,
back
yeah.
and forth.
They can transmutate too, like certain, like the Anakim class ones I noticed can actually turn into like elemental orbs and light formations and energy formations as well. I've noticed that with the really seriously old ones, they can do that.
When they like hide behind a tree, can they like are they like melding into the tree, or are they turning into a tree, or what is?
There are many creatures that can take the forms of the tree. We found out there's other elementals out there that actually will pose in plain sight. Like they'll do this and they'll be the tree. That like they're hiding in plain sight like camouflage. There's at least 3 different elemental types that can do this. Where they're just standing there watching you, and if you feel like you're being watched, it's sometimes them. And it's just a tree elemental type. They've taken that form of camouflage and adapted that over a period of time because of humans. And then you have the forest people that some of them use trees like portals. So, like every tree out there is a portal. That they are fat, well, at least bigger ones that you can literally walk through them. Think of the Harry Potter movies where they're walking through objects and they end up in another like dimensional layer, or they end up where they want to be through a portal, and it's like say a pillar at a train station or something like that. That's how they regard trees, is like a portal network.
All trees are just the big ones.
I was told all trees contribute to it. Now, of course, you can't have a huge dimensional being pass through something this small. Somebody was asking me about that. But interestingly enough, there are also dimensional, like non-corporeal beings that use that as well. And somebody had a picture of their closet door one time on Facebook. There was a wooden closet door that looked like there was a picture of an alien in the wood grain, or you could see a being's actual face that had burned its way into the wood. And I came to find out the tree that door came from, a being had used that as a portal, and the tree recorded the energy shape. So when they made it into wood, it was the shape of the being that passed through there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a trip. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, that totally goes along with some of the information that Rudolf Steiner gives, in that, they say some doctors or scientists or whatever say that the closest thing to a human being is actually a pig, maybe because they have some organs that they can trade with us or something like this. But what Rudolf Steiner says is the closest thing to a human being on the planet Earth is a tree. And if a tree is a portal and then a human being is a portal,
mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we have some plant DNA codes in us, nature elemental being DNA codes within us. See, we're a mixture. We're like a mutt race. We're technically a race of clones. I found out that we're actually part of the grand experiment, as people put it. Some of our original selves were taken from other places in the galaxy and brought here for the archontic farming. Various other souls were as well, but out of that mess came something positive, like an amalgam of different codes that then could help the rest of the galaxy and the rest of the universe. Because since we're sitting on a nexus point, think of Earth as on a galactic ley line, and we can transmit as well as receive information on this galactic ley line. And there are very few planets that have what Earth has. Earth is completely unique in this respect. We even feel a different range of emotions than some of these different galactics do. We have different genetics than they do, and we're able to actually bring all of that together into a very unique species.
We really are special, aren't we, Chris?
Yeah, I found that out recently. We transmit codexes out there to the galaxy, out in the galaxy, that help them out. Because of all the junk we've gone through, we start to form immunities to certain things like viruses, like different energies that hit us. Eventually, all humans will be immune to that, and we'll end up having an antidote for the rest of the galaxy for anything else they have.
Yeah. That's a really positive message, because, people always try to say, we're just like worthless, a piece of dust or something like this, or just, grew up from monkeys or something like that. And I just always knew that people are special. Human beings are special. And
they're treated like crap by some of these different entities, but overall, Source is making it so that we will evolve out of that muck, like rising out of the ashes, sort of thing.
Yeah, and so some of these bad alien forces, they try to give a message about how weak and powerless we are. Well, if we're so worthless, why are they so interested?
They're very interested and they're terrified of us, actually, because we're more powerful than they are. And I've come to notice that real quick. When I start bringing my energy vibration up, they run for the hills. I've noticed they used to bug the crap out of me. Entities would just harass me mercilessly. But when I clear out what needs to be cleared out of my own energy and I get my vibration up, they don't come anywhere near me at all.
So do you do any work with working with people that are like yourself that have this born gift and that have maybe come under attack or?
Yes, a lot of psychics come to me. A lot of mediums come to me. Channelers, they'll come to me. Some are irked at what I have to say because I tend to correct some of the information they have. I try to update their information base, where they are. Most of the time, they're grateful for the information that I'm able to give them, and I'm only was able to give it to them because of all the experiences I've had.
Right.